This is the Harlequin Room. This is episode 2, Becoming and Being a Creative. Oh no, I did get it right. Oh, fantastic. Don't like starting these things scripted, but I'm going to do it anyway because I need to try and practice being kind of concise and all that kind of... Ugh. Welcome to the Harlequin Room, the comedic advice podcast for the dreamers, the spiritually downtrodden, and the creatives of this world. My name is Ira Sylvester. I am a comedian. I have a degree in psychology and a bigger dick than my sister. This is a podcast for people who want an older brother in the creative industries. It is a podcast for those who don't really know what the right moves are necessarily, but they want to at least try and make some moves. Someone who wants to get advice from that, I'm not going to say homeless man underneath the bridge because I feel like I may have said that before. This is a podcast for anyone who wants to take advice from Matthew McConaughey's childhood hero, which actually was himself in 10 years' time, regardless of how successful he is. Now, I don't know if in that situation I am you in 10 years' time, or if you are me 10 years ago, or if we're both Matthew McConaughey, but either that or you just like listening to random mixed race dudes in attic rooms in Copenhagen. And in which case, you're also welcome to be here too, you know? I accept any and all into this little world of mine. This is going to be my attempt at teaching you what I learned, and that means that the advice that I do give, as a disclaimer, may be bad advice. It is my best attempt at trying to make sense of everything I've done so far. Hopefully you find it useful, and if you don't, then, you know, I don't know, stop listening. But I'm going to keep doing this because, as you will find out, it's all just part of the process. Last episode, or more accurately in the first episode, we were talking about starting despite having fear and accepting that life is defined by the choices that we make. But once you have chosen a direction, a new choice kind of appears, or rather a new question appears. And that is, if you decide you want to be a creative, what does it actually mean to be a creative? What is a creative? Because if you don't understand what it is that you're really aiming for, then you might end up chasing the wrong sorts of versions for it. You might end up actually just wasting a lot of everyone's time, and not just other people's, but the journey that is ahead is fraught with danger, young sir. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot, and honestly, you don't necessarily have to do it. And let me explain why. Firstly, we must deal with the fundamental confusion about who we are versus what we do. We live in a society that loves to define people by the work that they do. You know, for example, you can ask someone like, who are you? And their response could be something along the lines of, I'm a lawyer, which could translate as, I am someone who cares deeply about rules and restrictions, or it could mean that they see things in the world that they cannot accept and they want to change it. And it could also just mean that they're an absolute twat that wants money. The thing is we very often try to describe who we are by our function within society. And that is problematic, in my opinion. It is because the idea of identity, which is something I'm struggling a lot with in general, is far more vast and complex than the simple notion of what one does. And I think it's a consequence of the kind of capitalistic kind of society that we do live in, where people are defined by their function within that society. But before I go on that kind of tangent, I think it's important that we distinguish that when we pose the question of what does it mean to be a creative, we need to understand that we're talking about this on two fronts. There is the creativity as an adjective, as a characteristic, as a descriptor, as, I am creative. And then there is creative in the more professional career type sense. And these are similar, intertwined, but they are distinct things that we need to recognize the difference between as we move forward, because otherwise this is going to become crazy, crazy confusing. I feel like a lot of the pressure that we feel and the kind of insecurities that we come across, it comes from this actual issue of mixing up the terms creative and creative, because it implies that something that might be quite fundamentally important to you, i.e. being creative, is only something you can ever describe yourself as if you are being paid for it, which is just absolutely not true. Even when we talk about things like the creative industries, it's the notion of creative is so excessively and exceedingly broad. I am a facilitator for this organization called Roots In. We work in association with Soho House to provide this mentorship program where we connect young people who are on their way within the creative industries with those who have already made it. And I bring this up for 3 or 4 reasons, roughly. Firstly, just to let you know that I'm a good person who gives back to society because I'm a volunteer and therefore arguably better than you. But also, also because if you're listening to this podcast, the program that we run, which is a yearly 16-week program, is free. And if you're listening to this, there is a fairly decent chance that you're someone that would either qualify for or benefit from this program. So if you're interested, there's a link in my bio on Instagram, or on, if you go to Linktree/Ira Sylvester, you can find more information there, or just Google Roots In. That's not the point of this whole podcast, so I'm going to leave it at that, and I'll maybe leave a link down somewhere wherever you are consuming this. But the other reason why I bring this up is, when we do the launch events, when we do the introductory type things, we talk about what the notion of the creative industries are, or rather, we try to get the audience participants to describe what are the creative industries. And we do this because it's illuminating. It shows how vast the term is, because there are the obvious creative industries, actor, author, musician, singer, those kinds of creative industries, artist. Even the word artist can mean multiple things. And they're like the obvious creative industries, but an actor isn't the only creative in the film industry. The artist, a musical artist, isn't the only creative person in the music industry, and not everyone who works in the music industries is necessarily a creative, because accountants exist, people who built the studio. See, even as I say that, the people who built the studio, what does it mean to build? Because is there the architect? Are they a creative? Is the person who's doing the plastering a creative? As you can see, it very, very quickly becomes a bit kind of confusing on where the boundary necessarily lies. And trust me, myself, and I used to be a bit on my high horse about this, because Soho House is supposed to be a kind of members only club for creatives, and then you meet people and you're like, you're a CEO of a startup, how is that creative? And then you realize just how creative one has to be to be in a startup, and how broad the term is. But then you'll get someone apply to the program and they're like, I'm a dentist, and you're like, that can't be creative. But then you remember that grills exist, so it's like, oh, actually, I suppose dentists can be creative. It's just, you just don't want all of them to be creative. It's the problem with the term, or the issue with the definition, lays in the nature of what we're actually discussing, and that is that the term creative is constantly finding ways to redefine itself. It is growing exponentially throughout the years, which is frustrating when you're trying to define it like I am right now. But it also means that it should be quite exciting for you, because if you do think of yourself as a creative, or you want to think of yourself as a creative, and you don't know what you can do as a creative, just know that with each passing moment, with each passing day, the opportunities for what you could do are growing. They're becoming more and more and more, which is really, really exciting. The uncertainty of the definition can be really frustrating, really, really frustrating, especially when you're the one trying to define it. But also when you're trying to define yourself. It is labeling oneself may be uncouth in the whole humanistic kind of approach of things, but when you're trying to work out your path, using labels can be a useful kind of roadmap, identifier, something that you can use to kind of give direction or give an idea to what your direction should be. If you're seeking to nail down who you are, and you start off with such a term as creative, it is both accurate and says nothing, which in a way is kind of perfect, because as the term evolves and grows, it's always going to be relevant and representative of who you are. And a little side note, anyone who has pause or has an issue with those who describe themselves as creative because you see it as pretentious, quite simply, go fuck yourself. The notion that, firstly, your negativity is just not welcome, but secondly, the notion that you and your high horse are better than someone who has to broadly describe themselves just because you are slightly more specific than them is ghastly and just gross. It's just fuck off. Just simply fuck off. If you are in the process of trying to work out who you are and you describe yourself as a creative, you're where you need to be, and the whole process is about trying to define that and trying to work out the specifics of it. And you're doing that, and you will do that, and you've got time to do this. So if anyone makes you feel bad, or you feel kind of, I don't know, you have your own precognitions, premeditation stereotypes of the idea of a creative, let go of them. Just enjoy yourself. And this is something that I find personally relevant because, you know, the idea of like, what is a comedian? How does one become a comedian? Why did I want to be a comedian? First starts with, well, what is a comedian? What is it that I want to do? And fundamentally, I have a lot of creative interests, but really what I enjoy doing is playing around with ideas and trying to make myself and other people laugh. Comedian became right for me because the process of stand-up itself represented the most forms of creativity that I found important to who I am and the way that I want to live my life. Stand-up is one expression of that, but it's not the only one, and that might be relevant to you as well, in the sense that, for example, I want to write, I want to make sketches, I want to create things that don't necessarily become my main source of income, that aren't really my job. I mean, even doing this podcast, I'm enjoying or the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to journal my journey. I want to play with different formats, play with the idea of thought, and I like the idea of like writing everything out. And as much as this is for you, this is mostly actually for me. And you got to ask yourself, why and what are you creating, and what is its purpose? You don't need to have every creative impulse to become a creative, and you don't need every creative impulse to become a career. You can do things for the sake of doing them themselves, because wanting to do something because you enjoy it is just simply enough. It is just simply enough. Not everything needs to be monetized. Not everything has to exist for the purpose of profit, of trying to turn it into something else. It can just exist for its own sake, i.e., you have inherent value, and your inherent value is there. It doesn't matter if you can do this, that, or the other. It is a baseline thing that you just inhabit, and that base value can extend to things that aren't you know? It's important to understand the concept of intrinsic value, because it's necessary to understand the following mindset that someone who chooses creativity or a creative career then has to inhabit. Let's think about it. We treat leisure like it's trivial, right? You know, if you say it's a leisure activity, it is usually an implication that it is something that you do because it's easy or relaxing or fun or this, that, and the other, right? But that's not what leisure is. Leisure is what you do when the time is yours to spend on what you want it to be. Now that can be entertainment. That can be simple. That can be something as simple as taking a nap. But the idea of leisure is you do this because you want to do this. No one's making you do this. And when creating, the idea of creating should be for the inherent act of creating itself. It is a reward upon itself. So creation should be something you do at leisure. Creativity at its core is expression for its own sake. The reward for creative work should be the act of creating itself. Almost like, singing in the shower. You sing in the shower not to sell albums. You sing in the shower because it's fun, or that's it. That's pretty much it, because you want to. No one's making you sing in the shower, and you should approach the creative processes like that. Like, you're always singing in the shower. You're doing it for you. Now, the amount of pressure you put on yourself to improve and to change this and all that lot, that comes later. That surrounds it, but at its core, all of this that you do, no one's making you do this. It's just you. It's only you. So you have to decide and understand why you're doing this before you can move forward with the act of doing it. Do this because you want to, not because you feel like you have to, or like you have to prove something, because if you are doing that, you are doing it for the wrong reasons. That is that simple. That is to say, if you only create when there's money or validation or an audience, you've already lost the freedom that makes creativity meaningful. To summarize that point, if I was rambling too much, we treat leisure like it's trivial, but real leisure is just doing what you want to do because you want to do it. If you only create when there's a reward to be gained, then you've lost the heart, the core of what makes creating valuable, and that is for its own sake, the process. Actually kind of relates a lot to this whole notion of like, I get a lot of adverts being like, AI is going to make your life so much easier. Now you don't have to worry about kind of editing this together or trying to write a script or doing all this. That's the whole point. I mean, like, the ridiculous notion of that is that AI is arguably trying to take away the process itself that we're trying to enjoy. The aim is not to have a successful podcast. The aim is not to become a famous comedian. The aim is not to become or to gain this notoriety or fame or anything like that. The whole point of all of this, we do it is because we enjoy it and we want to enjoy it, or because it serves some purpose that you find deeply meaningful to yourself. For example, Jean-Paul Sartre had this quote, which I absolutely love, and it is, if I became a philosopher, if I sought this fame for which I'm still seeking, it was to impress women, basically. And I love that, because it means the whole notion of why he became one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century is purely to impress women, and that is a reason that I can vehemently get behind. It is just this notion that it doesn't matter what your reasoning is. It's just make sure that it's something that has intrinsic value to yourself. And what's interesting from a psychological perspective, you can actually, and this will also become relevant later, you can actually kill intrinsic motivation by introducing extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic means that you do something for the satisfying feeling that it gives you, love, friendship, I don't know, masturbation, whatever the fuck it's going to be. Extrinsic motivation is when you get a reward for something, i.e. someone pays me to do this. And it's the reason why you get these stupid situations when you'll have like a job interview and someone go, tell me, why do you want to work for this company? And what they're seeking is an intrinsic answer. Because I have a deep love of McDonald's fries. Whereas the motivation to work for most places is extrinsically motivated. I need money to survive. You know, like it's like that's the confusion that you get there. And what you need to be careful of and what you need to be cognizant of is that if you're doing something for intrinsic purposes, when you introduce extrinsic purposes, that can override your initial reason for doing something. So, for example, and you'll see this amongst comedians, and something I've been guilty of myself, is that I do stand up because I enjoy performing, I enjoy making people laugh, and then you'll see some people go, oh, well, I won't do this gig because I'm not going to get the fee that I deserve. And don't get me wrong, I understand valuing oneself and one's work for situations. However, there is also that notion of, well, if you enjoy it, why do we need to pay you? Like, why do you need to get paid? And honestly, it's a valid question. Like, it's a valid argument. Like, if you enjoy it, then why do you need external motivation to do it? And the simple answer is because by getting that kind of external reward, like I need to be paid for gigs, is so that I can survive, because we live in a society that requires me to have money so that I can function as part of that society, right? But quite frankly, yeah, if we could remove the whole notion of money, and I could just perform and everything that I needed was kind of just laid out for me, and I could live the life of a traveling comedian and play with ideas and thoughts like that, that'd be absolutely fantastic. I would love to do that. But unfortunately, that's not the society that we live in. So there needs to be some extrinsic reward. Otherwise, I'm not able to do it for the intrinsic reasons that I have inside. And I generally have an issue with the capitalistic society we live in, and this is a little bit of a tangent. And you have to understand, I am a socialist. I'm a socialist for the same reason that I'm a comedian, which is, quite frankly, I don't really want to work. And the problem with being a creative, or whatever that form is, like the idea of wanting to express yourself for the sake of expressing yourself for intrinsic motivation, is that modern society is built around profit and productivity, which in a way kind of sounds like it actually lends itself to the creative process, creating something for the sake of creating something, but it's not. It's based around creating something for a profitable consumption, not just for consumption's sake. So if we were to put it into like a farming analogy, you don't make enough food that can feed the town that is nearby or whatever. You make enough food that you can make money off, that you can sell, and all excess is just thrown away. It is not redistributed to those who need it. It should be that way, that it is redistributed, and there are policies in certain countries like Denmark and other other Scandinavian countries that do employ these kinds of things, which is a reason why I live here, because I think socialist ideas lead to a society that I want to live in. But on a greater extent, America being a great example, there is an inherent conflict between creativity as expression and the values that the system has in terms of output and monetization. Because trying to turn your nature into a product is inherently dissonant. They just don't mix, because making something for the express purpose of an extrinsic reward and making something for the express purpose of it being intrinsically valuable to you are literally at odds. So how do you balance the two, where you're both doing it because you want to do it, but you're also doing it because you're getting a reward from it? And the back and forth between these two notions it's like spice to a white person. It hurts. It hurts so much. And what's funny? It's so pervasive throughout not just modern society, but it comes with the birth of capitalism as well. Just because, I don't just mean like the Industrial Revolution. I'm talking about the revolution of agriculture in and of itself. Even if you look at something, let's say like the Romantic era between like the 18th century and however, when did it go on? It's like 18th. Let me look it up. Yeah, 18th to mid 19th century. there was this whole notion societally of melancholia and madness, that when someone was losing their mind and they were depressive, it was a sign that they were a creative genius. It's something that it's something that you'll recognize in a lot of society. The artist who doesn't want his artwork to be not expressed but exploited. The artist who doesn't want to be exploited. It's like the Kurt Cobain conundrum, as I have decided to coin. It's just the notion of why so many creators struggle mentally. Let me try and order my thoughts in a way that is concise and easy to understand. The tension that exists between doing something for intrinsic purposes versus extrinsic motivation, as dictated by society at large, is something that is commonplace and something that exists in our modern society and dates back basically to the birth of agriculture, and it's something that I think is an inherent flaw of a capitalist society, and that is the two ideas don't work with each other. There is a cognitive dissonance, there is a clash that is unavoidable and pervasive, and I do not have an answer for. And I think it's the reason why, I'm sure that it is a reason why so many creators struggle mentally. Like, the whole notion of melancholia and madness that existed during the Romantic era, which is between like the 18th and 19th century, where there's this, it was societally understood that if someone was essentially like depressive and insane, that was a sign that they were a creative genius. It's something you see even in modern times. I mean, look at Kurt Cobain. It's like the whole issue was that he was worried that his art form was the way that he expressed himself, that connected with so many people, ended up being taken and turned into some exploitable, financialized being that was not just beyond his control, but kind of grossly misshaped what it was that he was originally trying to express. And the issue that he had around that was so deeply concerning, it led him to take his own life. And that is why I say it is so important that you understand why you are doing what you're doing, why you're creating, why you're making what you make. Is it for that external validation, or is it because you just want to? Because if those two things end up getting confused, then, I mean, it can literally be fatal, especially if you tie that so tightly to your kind of inherent self-worth. Another point that should be understood and discussed and thought about is the pleasure points that we see and then aim for. And what I mean by that in a professional setting is many people will hear about and kind of fixate on a specific kind of job or role within the creative industries, i.e. like a journalist, filmmaker, musician, and then they will get stuck when this path is overcrowded, and not understanding what your actual internal intrinsic motivation is can mean that you will get lost for a very long time on a path that doesn't necessarily benefit or suit you. So what my advice is instead of chasing a job title, first understand what your pleasure points are within that role. So earlier on I said I like being a comedian because I like playing with ideas and I like making people, mostly myself, laugh. Maybe your pleasure points are storytelling, or maybe it's analysis, or maybe it's performance, or maybe it's problem solving, or maybe it's visual expression. But essentially, you have to, once you understand what your pleasure points are, you can see what the options are for them to be expressed in industries and roles that already exist. When you understand what you actually enjoy, your options will expand. and you might find fulfillment in places that you never would have considered. For example, I'm a comedian, right? I like making sketches, I like writing, I like playing with ideas. I would probably do pretty all right in advertising. It's very much just playing with ideas and trying to make sure that they're memorable. But although I could maybe find some pleasure in that, the key thing that is for me is I want to make something that I want to create. I'm very, very stubborn and quite strong-willed, and I don't particularly like the idea of having someone try and create. I don't like being directed creatively, which is also another reason why I probably wouldn't be a great actor. It would be, let me do my thing, and then I'm fine. Which is actually also part of the reason why I want to get to a certain level of fame, because I essentially want to be left alone. Which sounds like a misnomer, or whatever the right phrase is there, but what I mean is I want to get to that certain level of kind of fame and respectability that my voice and name carries enough weight that I can get greenlit to do the projects that I want to do, or I have the capital that I can just fund these projects myself, like Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer are doing. They very much in control of their own like kind of little world, and that's what I want. I want to live the life of like Rob McElhaney. You know, it's like I don't need to be an absolute household name, but I have a respectable body of work that will mean that I can live a very pleasant life in a society that requires me to earn a certain amount of capital, but then also basically just do what I want. That's really what I want. It's just to be left alone. And on that note, this would probably be the right time to go to one of our sponsors for the show. So, today's sponsor is Ambition Light, for creatives who still want success, just without the crushing anxiety. Same dreams, fewer panic attacks. Ambition Light, because burnout is not a personality trait. There is a general idea, or I guess concern, that either you may have had yourself, or you've heard in one form or another, that you simply just don't have the time to be a creative. But I think if we recognize that being a creative can be more than just a career path or a career choice, it can be a hobby, it can be a sideline type thing, that it is just something that you can, it's something you can inhabit more than something you have to do all the time. Objectively speaking, we have more time than any previous generation on the planet. We live longer lives and we have more usable hours in the day. And the real fact of the matter is, and I'm sorry if this sounds a little bit harsh, but it's not that you don't have the time, it's you just actually don't want it that much, or you want it, but you're just not willing to pay the price to get it. The point and the message I'm trying to convey is that the notion that you don't have enough time is an excuse. It's just fundamentally an excuse. There is time in one way, shape, form, or another, but it will require sacrifice. And what you're willing to sacrifice is kind of the aim of the game. And don't get me wrong, like creative life, it costs time, it costs comfort, and it costs easier pleasure. Like you can be exhausted by a day's worth of work, don't get me wrong, but the question isn't can I. Fundamentally, if you're part of the first world, the question is usually just like, will I? You know what I mean? I suppose another aspect can be kind of the permission that we give ourselves. I mentioned, maybe I cut it out, it doesn't really matter, that you can have blocks, you can have mental things that are holding you back. And some of those kind of things can be waiting for permission to call yourself a creative, to get that external validation so that you feel that you are worthy of doing what it is that you need to do, or whatever bullshit that you have around it. But you have to understand that if you want to be a creative, you already are. You are a creative. I don't know who needs to hear this, but you are a creative. You're a creative when you decide you are. The term isn't pretentious, it's broad, it is evolving, and it is personal. And consistency matters more than having it fully figured out. So it's not about being a good one, it's not about being the best one, it's not even about being a bad one, it's just about just doing, just do. Just be. Live. Your identity doesn't come from the industry. It comes from what you repeatedly choose to do. That is who you are. The hard truth of the whole kind of like mindset of creative versus the profession of a creative kind of brings us back to what the central question is. And that is, what does it mean to be a creative? And here's the truth here's my truth, here's the truth that I keep coming back to. And that is, being creative isn't one thing. It is not a job title. It is not an industry. It is definitely not something that gets decided by whether or not someone is paying you. It is. There are two versions of this life, right? There is the professional version where your creativity exists inside a system, and that comes with deadlines, algorithms, clients, audiences, compromise. And then there is the mindset, the part of you that makes it, the part of you that makes things because you want to, the part of you that does it for the intrinsic value of it, because it's interesting, because it's fun, because something inside you feels better when it comes out, or when that side of you is expressed. And you don't need the profession to live a creative life. You might want the profession, but if you want the profession, you absolutely need the mindset of, you would do this even if no one was paying you, because for a very long time they won't be. You will have to do this out of a labor of love, with the understanding that it may never go anywhere. Breaking into the creative industries is going to be difficult. So if you're not doing it for the love of the game, you're just setting yourself up for failure, because you need either just the know-how, the network, or just sheer luck to break in. And the thing is, because if you don't do it out of a labor of love, you're going to suffer. You're going to suffer a lot, because the industry will test your patience. It will push you. It will mess with your confidence, your sense of self-esteem, your identity, and sometimes even for the love of the thing itself. And here's the hard part of the hard part, and that is, the world we live in doesn't always value what you value. If it will ask you to justify your time, to monetize your interest, to turn your curiosity into content and your personality into a product. It will sometimes be okay. Sometimes that will work. And other times, the healthier thing you can do is just keep it to yourself. It's create because you enjoy it. Create and write because you like writing. Make things badly. Do things how you need to do them. Make things no one sees, and make things that never become a career. Because the point of creativity was never the outcome. The point of creativity should never be the outcome. It's supposed to be about the expression, the exploration, the fact that you choose to spend your time making something instead of just consuming everything. So if you're figuring out or trying to figure out if you are a creative, you are. If you're curious, if you make things, if you care about ideas, expression, or trying to turn something in your head into something in the world around you, you are a creative. The real question isn't, am I a creative? The real question is, what part of this do I actually need to live a life that feels like mine? And once you know that, the only thing left is the same question from the last episode, and that is, are you willing to make the choices that match it? Now we're going to go to our Agony Uncle section. So today we've had a message from our friend Conrad. So we're going to listen to this. I've actually selected this one because it's extremely relevant to what we're talking about. And I'm going to play it and then we will answer.
Agony Uncle Ira. I'm leaving you this message because I need your help with something. I'm trying to work out how much a comedian should pander to the audience. If a comedian only says things that they think are funny, then of course sometimes that doesn't hit and the audience isn't enjoying it and they need to kind of find that audience. But at the same time, the comedian is there to entertain the audience. So trying to run that line, something I've always been interested in. Let me know your thoughts.
That was from Conrad Malden, and if for whatever reason you don't know him, he's an absolutely fantastic comedian. He is honestly one of the just the nicest people you're ever going to meet in your entire life. And he is also on tour at the moment with his show King Carrot. So if you can get tickets, go check it out. It's going to be very, very, very funny. And just go watch him. And also, Conrad, if you're watching this, thank you for writing that in. Massively appreciate it. Writing it in, you spoke. But anyway, you understand what I mean. So in answer to the question, in terms of how much do we pander to the audience and how much do we stick to what we want to say, my answer to that question is as long as you are being authentic to yourself, at least in some way, shape or form, then you're probably okay. I don't think that is the kind of situation where you have a steadfast, this is the boundary, this is what's right, this is what's wrong. So when it comes to writing material, it is a constant battle between what you think is funny and what the audience thinks is funny, and you are trying to find the point where those two circles of the Venn diagram cross over as much as possible, right? And pandering to the crowd can be, for example, crowd work. It's when people want to be spoken to. There are some audiences you'll get where you'll be trying material and it doesn't matter what the material is, doesn't matter what the subject matter is, they're just not into it. They just only for some reason laugh when you're talking to them, right? And so some nights you have to adapt to some degree where you're giving the audience what they want, which can be just talking to them. Or other nights you might want to practice your crowd work and the audience is like, no, don't talk to me. I'm in the fetal position. I want you to just do your material so I can laugh and we can leave. And I think what we have to be aware of when it comes to pandering is that this is still your art form at the end of the day. And you should only ever put out what you are willing to defend and accept as part of what you are creating. The notion I'm trying to get at is when you create something and you put it out there, it is an extension of yourself. If you feel like you are pandering to the degree that this doesn't feel authentic to who you are, then you have gone too far. If you are comfortable with what you're putting out, because maybe it's not your favorite, but it is close enough to what you consider to be like your kind of quote unquote brand, then I think you're still in the safe area. I just fundamentally think as long as you feel like you're being authentic to yourself and your craft and you are not doing your fans and the type of fans you have a disservice, then I think you're okay. Especially because if you're going to do something niche, for example, there is definitely a world for the niche. In fact, I actually think that the way that social media is working, it is pandering more to niche subjects. So I was having this argument the other day that the kind of mainstream is dying in the sense that what is most popular tends to be what is the most, or what is the lowest common denominator. The biggest pop songs are never anyone's favorite song. They are just the songs that everyone knows the words to, and they're fun and they're enjoyable, but they're not fulfilling. They're not kind of defining. They're not the songs that like, oh my god, when I heard Eye of the Tiger, it changed my life, even though that song in particular maybe is a bad example because it's used for every montage ever. But yeah, I think find the balance between what is authentic to yourself and what you feel you would be proud by standing behind. And that's going to change a little bit for everyone. So hopefully that's enough of an answer, not too much of a non-answer. Finally, this is the recommendation. The recommendation I am going to give for this week, this month, this episodes podcast is actually another podcast. It is the Wes Cecil podcast. Now, I discovered this man, Wes Cecil, on YouTube some years ago, and he's just brilliant. He's got a really charming way of speaking, and he's got humor, and they're just really, really interesting lectures. Now, I don't know, not that I don't know if he's a lecturer, he is at times a lecturer. I don't actually know what his job is. If I tried to find him, like I went onto his website, which you should go onto because you can find where to listen to him on like Spotify and YouTube and Instagram, and you can donate to his Patreon, which I very, very highly suggest that you do because I can't afford to. Not that it's expensive, I'm just broke. And I found the About Me section, and true to a humanist, which is not something I'm sure he describes himself as, but ironically a humanist never would describe themselves as anything because they don't believe in labels. In his About Me section, it just says, besides gardening and generally wandering about in woods, I have written a few books, plays, and delivered a series of well-received public lectures under the auspices of Peninsula College. I find the man very interesting. I just very highly suggest you listen to him, and in particular, this episode would be most related to his playlist, his series on the humane arts. Give that a listen, it's really interesting. His lectures do tend to be between like 20 minutes to over an hour, so if you want something a little bit more kind of snippety, bite-sizey, I would check out the School of Life on YouTube. They've got a bunch of really interesting things, and I'm going to link this all in the description below, but there is one on how to find creative work by the School of Life on YouTube, which is very related to what I'm saying, but far more concise, so you should check that out as well. In the meantime, if you've gotten this far, if you enjoyed listening to this, if this gave you something to think about, then I'd really appreciate it if you followed or subscribed wherever it is that you are consuming this piece of auditory / visual media. And if you want to look at the deeper ideas that go into what I'm talking about, because who knows how much I'm going to cut out, and I do try to keep this concise, but the ideas are definitely much more broad, please consider subscribing to my newsletter, which goes out every few weeks, probably about the same rate that these podcasts go out. And there I use my notes and I basically just type it all up, and it's just somewhere where you can kind of consider it a little bit further. I really am enjoying this. It's definitely longer than I thought it would be. I only wanted these episodes to be half an hour, but I think this is probably going to be another one that's about 45 minutes. And yeah, I'm just enjoying this. So I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope I get some decent content out of this that I can put online, and I hope I can help some people. And I hope this helps you. And if you have any topics you want me to cover or questions you want to write in, send them to irasylvestergb@gmail.com, or shoot me a message on Insta, and or I don't know, leave a comment or something like that. I'll find it. Just try and contact me. I'm not that hard to find. I make myself very, very available. I'm a slut for. I didn't have a joke for it, so fuck it. I'm just going to cut that last bit out. So if you got this far, thank you so much for listening and for being a part of this, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.